Preview season rolls on, and today it's all about the UCLA Bruins. Nico Iamaleava comes over in what was a surprise move of the offseason. How do the Bruins take a step forward in 2025? We'll talk about all that and more here next on Armchair Analysis. Hope you guys are having a fantastic Saturday here. I hope you had a great week. Welcome into the show. If you enjoy what you're seeing, or if you're new around here, please leave a like, subscribe. It's all free. Just helps us reach our goal. We're looking to reach 100 subscribers by the time we start college football season. So we've got a little over 2 months, but we're trying to get there, and we got previews every single day. All 68 Power 5 teams. That's 68 including Notre Dame, of course. We're previewing every single one of them, so I'm excited to get to it, and hopefully you guys are too. But yeah, without any further interruptions or time wasted, let's go ahead and talk about UCLA in 2025. This is a team that last year went 5-7, 3-6 in Big Ten, but towards the back end of the season really started to fight, really started to show there was something, maybe something there. However, this team only scored 18.4 points per game. That was 126. That was the bottom 10 in FBS, college football. Points per game allowed, they allowed 25.2. That was 68th. That was decent. It improved over the course of the year, but it was decent. It was nothing great, nothing crazy. Turnover margin per game, negative 0.3. That was 90th, just barely in the top 100 in college football. But what they did do was put together a pretty decent recruiting class, 45th in the country. And again, that's not great. That's not even good. It's just decent, 45th. But then they put together a top 20 portal class with 31 commitments, including Nico Iamaleava and even his brother Madden, who's coming over to play quarterback, probably in the future after Nico departs. They bring in other guys, of course, Javian Thomas, Caden Robinson from Appalachian State, Mikey Matthews come over from Cal. There's some really solid pieces to this team, and we'll talk about it because I think it really brings it puts you in a weird spot, because if all this works out, UCLA might actually be a really good team. If it doesn't work out, then we're wondering a couple things. Did Nico Iamaleava make the right move or wrong move? Deshaun Foster and his future at this school. We can talk about all that stuff a little bit down the line. But overall, the 2024 recap, I mean, when we look back at 2024, I think it exceeded expectations. 5-7 was better than I think a lot of people would have expected. 3-6 is certainly better, especially with the schedule that they faced. I mean, they had wins last year over Rutgers and Nebraska, both on the road, and then they got a win over Iowa too at home. I mean, that's an impressive few wins. I know all those teams were not necessarily what we thought they might be, but that's still so impressive to go on the road and win a couple of those games. This is a team that is kind of going to have their work cut out for them from the very beginning, and let's talk about it a little bit. Of course, Deshaun Foster comes in as his second year as a head coach, but brings in offensive coordinator Tino Sunseri from Indiana. Obviously helped lead what was a really impressive group on the Indiana offense, of course, led by Curtis Rourke and Elijah Surratt and all those guys over there. Coming over, and he's kind of taken over a similar undertaking here at UCLA. I almost messed up. But here at UCLA, a good quarterback, Nico Iamaleava, a really good running back too, by the way, Javian Thomas, underrated, I think, in this whole transfer portal move, I guess. When we look at what UCLA brought in, Javian Thomas is talked about. But when we look at running backs in general in the portal, Javian Thomas, of course, overshadowed at Cal by Jaden Ott, who was so good and so great for them and is now at Oklahoma. But Thomas is going to be in the backfield with Jalen Berger. That's a pretty big deal because Jalen Berger obviously come over from Wisconsin last year. Those two guys, I think, can pair up and make a really solid 1-2 punch in the backfield. At wide receiver, it's interesting. Of course, I talked about Caden Robinson coming over from Appalachian State. You got Mikey Matthews coming in from Cal. You got Quasi Gilmer, who's expected to be a starter and play and was effective at times last year. Titus Mokiao Atamala is going to be Iamaleava. Sorry, I said that wrong. I probably still said that wrong in a way. But those are some of your wide receivers. They also showed Jaden Wilson, a senior, on this roster as well. The wide receiver room is interesting because I need to see it. I have to see proven success at some point from them, and I can't just go off of assumptions. I mean, Caden Robinson was a guy at App State who, if I'm being honest, never really played the way that I think a lot of people, especially in Boone, would have expected from him. He was a guy that they had a lot of high hopes for and just really never made those plays, never became that guy in that offense. As for Mikey Matthews, he's on his third school now. He's taken another step and trying to adjust as well. Of course, he started at Utah, going to Cal, and now at UCLA. How does he step forward? Can he step forward? Of course, we talk about it all the time here. When you got a player on his third school, it normally doesn't work out the way you would like it to. Now, I would certainly like for it to, because I think Mikey Matthews has some talent, but we just have yet to see it on a full season basis. At tight end, you got Hudson Habermehl, going to be an interesting guy to have over there, of course. On top of that, you got Jack Peterson, another tight end. So that'll be an interesting group in its own right, see how they affect the offense and can play for it. The offensive line, you got 3 of 5 players from last year returning, and as a matter of fact, 2 of those are starters. But what you don't have, or what you did was bring in 2 transfers who I think could make a difference. Cortland Ford comes over from Kentucky. He's expected to be a really decent starter for this team in 2025. Then Julian Armella coming over from Florida State. We'll see. Those 2 guys added into this offense and on the offensive line, which, by the way, their grades last year, according to PFF, were awful by Power 5 standards. Their pass blocking grade was 53.8. That was 65 out of 68 Power 5 teams. Again, I'm talking all Power 4 conferences and Notre Dame. Their run block was 55.4. That's 62nd out of 68. They need an improvement on the line of scrimmage, especially to protect Nico Iamaleava, because, I mean, let's be honest, if he goes down at any point this season, we can probably just write it in. I mean, that's how important Nico is to this team and this offense in 2025. As for the defense, they're led by Akaika Malo coming in his second year as a defensive coordinator at UCLA, and they bring in 7 of 11 players return from the 24 roster. You bring in Ben Perry, who's my biggest kind of X factor transfer here for this defense. It comes over a linebacker from Louisville, who I think is going to make a lot of things happen. Another name that I'm really keeping an eye on here is Cole Cogshell, 4-star edge rusher coming out of high school. He's on the roster, and I think he's going to make a difference at some point for this defense. As a whole, though, let's just take a look at the returning leaders. Okay, they had, I think, their top 6 or 7 tacklers leave last year, which leaves Siale Taupaki 23 combined tackles last season. Tackles for loss, Jalen Woods, 2 tackles for loss last year. Multiple players had 1 sack, but it was only like 3 or 4 players that return with 1 sack from last year. 0 of 10 interceptions from last season return, and 0 of 8 fumbles forced return from last year. This team needs to find playmakers on the defensive side, and they need to find them fast, because this is not really a schedule where you get to just kind of wait and come into your own. You don't have a handful of tune-up games to play. You get Utah at home right off the bat on Saturday, August 30th. And then it doesn't get easier. You go to UNLV, which I know is going through their own changes, but Dan Mullen is a coach who's going to have them ready. New Mexico is down, so that'll be kind of your tune-up game, but you already be in your 3rd game of the season. A bye week and then a road trip to Northwestern. This is something else about this schedule while we're talking about Northwestern, because while I don't believe Northwestern is going to be good, I think that they are an interesting team. I think they're going to be interesting to follow due to the way their schedule could play out. But this is kind of the typical thing here. The outside of Northwestern and UNLV, the toughest games that you have on the schedule are on the road, which you would think is a good thing. However, some of the teams that come in here go to the Rose Bowl to play: Penn State, Utah, Nebraska, Washington. It is not light at all. I mean, that's still really difficult to face. On top of the fact that your road games being so tough and so difficult, Northwestern's not going to be easy. UNLV's not, I don't think, going to be easy, even though they did get torn up by the portal. Michigan State, not going to be easy, especially on the road. At Indiana, not easy. That was a playoff team last year, let's not forget. At Ohio State, at USC. It's not I can't state it enough. This is a difficult schedule to get through. This team is largely unproven, and this is kind of what I wrote about this team, and then I'm going to read you what we had from the Athlon Sports magazine, what the quote was from there. But this team is largely unproven, and of course they got Nico, but let's pump the brakes a little bit until we see what they look like on the field week 1 against Utah. We can talk about all the things they did on paper, and all the things they did on paper look nice. But we've been bitten by this before. I've certainly been bitten by a team that went out and utilized the portal to the max, and then ends up going 6-6, which is, I think, would be an improvement and an interesting season for UCLA. It would show something. I think a bowl game is the expectation. This team, this roster, is not a championship roster. Can't be, won't be. I just refuse to believe that it's going to happen that way. But they can be a team that fights for a bowl game. And that's kind of where I think their ceiling sits, is 7-5, maybe at most. I don't really see 8 wins at all. Let's talk about what was said by an anonymous opposing Big Ten assistant coach. If Nico wasn't a local kid, I don't think these two end up together. It's going to be fascinating to watch, and it's hard to understand if you're in Nico's camp. This is a less talented roster than Knoxville, and they're rebuilding the offensive line with portal guys and a new offensive line coach and offensive coordinator. They portaled a lot of guys in on defense to make up for some major losses, so don't expect major improvement there. This is a team with a ton of questions and almost all new staff and superstar transfer quarterback. They're going to steal a lot of attention from USC for a bit, but it's going to be a huge challenge for a young, unproven head coach to keep this from becoming a circus that falls apart. I have a hard time disagreeing. Now, I'm not going to say that I want or expect failure, because I don't. And truth be told, nobody should. This is an interesting team with, I mean, there's a lot to prove in a lot of ways on this team. So we'll see. We'll see how the heart plays. We'll see how this schedule plays. But it's going to be tough. Let's go ahead and take a look at the schedule here in 2025. And again, we've already talked about really their games, but let's take a look at what they're expected to do. The over/under win total sits at 5.5. I think that's accurate. I think somewhere between 4 and 7 is where they'll land. Odds to win the Big Ten plus 21,000. National championship odds plus 100,000. We see a lot of those this time of year, especially as we're early in the season, or early still in preview season, even though we're getting close to halfway through. This is going to be an interesting one. So let's go ahead and predict it. They start with Utah, and with all the changes on both sides, there's one thing that I trust more than anything else. That's Kyle Whittingham versus a young head coach. We're going to take Utah to get the win here. You go on the road to UNLV, and I think that while Dan Mullen will have this Rebels team ready to go, I'm not having too high hopes. I'm not expecting too much. I think that UCLA will get the win. I think they'll beat New Mexico as well. They'll follow that up with a road trip to Northwestern after a bye week, and that one will be interesting because I think these are two teams that are on a similar playing field. Two teams that have a transfer quarterback and have a lot to prove, or a lot that they want to prove. This game, this road trip as a whole, I think is going to be interesting. Now, even though this falls after a bye week, I'm standing by my original prediction, which is Northwestern to get the win. And I accidentally did this, but it probably shouldn't be a surprise. I got Penn State also winning in the Rose Bowl. I think that this is going to be one of, if not the toughest game of the year for UCLA, and they have plenty of them. But this is going to be a brutal football game, and I think Penn State's just that much better. You follow that up, a really tough game, a confidence killer even, with a road trip to East Lansing, Michigan, to face Michigan State. And once again, I mean, how can I sit here and act like I believe that anything crazy is going to happen here? Because I just don't. I don't buy this UCLA team, especially on the road. Given that, I'm going to go ahead and take Michigan State again. I think they're just a better team in this situation, and I think them being at home only plays into that. You get Maryland at home, you get a bit of a break. I don't think Maryland's going to be very good this year. I think they're going to be working through a lot of stuff. I think this is an easy chance to get a win. Not an easy win, just an easy opportunity for one. You get Indiana on the road, and again, this Indiana team's not going anywhere. Kurt Cignetti is not going anywhere. I don't care if Tino Sunseri is still on the coaching staff or not. They kept a lot of guys from transferring out. They bring in some really big pieces, of course, Fernando Mendoza being the big one. I don't really see how Indiana just falls off a cliff. I don't think they're going to go back to just being average or mediocre. I got Indiana beating UCLA. That's going into your second bye week of the season. Then you're going to come out of that and face Nebraska. At home, a chance to prove something. A chance to show something. And I think that they are going to do it. I think they are going to get their upset, their big win of the season right here against Nebraska. A confidence booster even over this Nebraska team. And it may even hinder Nebraska from making a college football playoff. If you haven't seen that preview, go back and watch that. But yeah, just not buying into Nebraska as a playoff team, and I think that they're going to fall. They're going to slip at some point, and it just feels like this is kind of that light game towards the end of the season where they end up falling. You go on the road to face Ohio State after an emotional upset win, and even if it wasn't that way, I don't see any real shot. I think this is going to be one of those where, like the ESPN FPI does like a 90% for Ohio State before we even get to the game. I don't really see UCLA hanging around. I don't see them winning this game, especially not in Columbus. You come back and you play Washington, and I think at this point we're going to know who DeMond Williams is. We're going to know who this Washington team is. I think it's going to be a really good team. I'm giving UCLA the loss there. And then you close it out with the rivalry game against USC. I'm expecting improvement, of course, from USC. They improved tremendously last year on the defensive side of the football. I think we're going to see more of the same going forward. Taking USC to get the job done in rivalry week, leading to a 4-8, 2-7 record. This is not so much about who UCLA is or isn't. This is about what the schedule around them is, and really what I expect the rest of them to be. Northwestern is a coin flip game, certainly. But even if I flip that Northwestern game, they don't. I think they either win one of Northwestern or Nebraska. They could beat Michigan State. They could. And they could pull off another upset or two. I just don't see it happening. I think that this team as a potential sleeper team, as others have predicted it, I just don't buy it. I don't love it. I don't think that's going to happen. I could see this team being a bowl team. I could see them pulling off an upset, hence why I picked them to do it against Nebraska. I just don't see more than that. I think it would be a little too much to make that prediction. But either way, let me know what you think if you're a UCLA fan. Feel free to let me know what I may have missed, who I may have missed. Who did I not talk about enough on this roster that could maybe bring this whole thing together, put this whole roster together? Want to shout out Athlon Sports, their preview magazine. I use that to get all the quotes that I've been using over the last couple of weeks, and they're awesome. They do a great job, and truth be told, I do this kind of to promote their brand, even though I don't get paid. If I did, you'd know. But They don't ask me to promote this. I do it because I enjoy what they put out. I think it's the best preview magazine you can find, especially for the money. If you want to go a little deeper, which I do every once in a while, you got Phil Steele's College Football Preview magazine. Again, not paid by either one of them, but I love them. And if I didn't use them, you wouldn't even know about them. So, well, you probably would, but you wouldn't hear about them here. So, appreciate you guys tuning in again. Tomorrow, we get a fun one because I'm really excited to talk about the Florida Gators in 2025, a team that was a surprising 8-5. And when I say surprising, like they worked through a brutal schedule with a freshman quarterback and went 8-5. Or with quarterback inconsistencies, because it wasn't just DJ Lagway, it was injuries to guys like Graham Mertz. How did they push forward? How do they become a better team in 2025? How do they push for the playoff in 2025? All those questions will be answered tomorrow here on the channel. So make sure you like, subscribe, comment down below. Let me know what I may have missed here. Let me know what you think UCLA will be in 2025. And make sure you stick around, subscribe. That way you don't miss a single video. We got a whole playlist in the on the channel of every single one of these previews, as we call it, preview season in 2025. I'm excited. I'm excited to roll with Florida tomorrow. So make sure you stick around, and we will see you then.